Hi, I'm Jessie Heron, host of Rediscover Your Story, a podcast for marketers who need a break from everyday learning but still want to hear from like-minded professionals on all things creative. Today, we have Kevin Dugan, a content veteran that knows all the new tricks. And with that, let's rediscover his story. Hey, Kevin.
Hi, Jessie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, thanks for joining the Rediscover Your Story podcast.
Very good to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. So we were just talking off camera about Cincinnati social media, and I think that's probably where we met. And I do think it was probably before I started at US Digital. So it was, 16-ish years ago, maybe?
Easily, yeah. Because I think I started that at around 2008 with Dave Knox and Daniel Lally. So it would have been, when did you go to US Digital Partners?
2008.
Yeah.
But it was like November of 2008, if I remember.
So yeah, it has been a while.
Yeah, it's been, well, and I just kind of was doing like history and just looking things up about you, because you were coming on the podcast. Mm-hmm. And I hope this doesn't embarrass you, but like, have you ever seen the movie Monsters University?
Yes,
okay.
I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and you see like Mike Wazowski and like all the big dogs like walking through and everyone's like, oh my God, they're like so amazing. I literally revered you.
Then we got to know each other and that was kind of tempered down a little bit, right?
It out. Yeah, no. I felt like but you've always been on the forefront of all things content, social media being one of those major turning points. And I just wanted to make sure that you knew that's how I felt about you.
I do appreciate you saying that. That's cool. Thank you.
And then you got to know him and you're like, she's so weird.
I would
weird
never
together.
say that. You got me my current job, that's true, right?
Yes.
I have you to thank for that.
No, yeah, that's all right.
I did part of it, obviously.
Yeah, you did the work. I just made the recommendation, but you definitely did the work.
It was very helpful.
Yeah. But honestly though, you started Cincinnati social media, the whole group that ended up attracting, how many people would you have come to those events? There were hundreds.
There were a lot of people. Yeah, I would say that Matt Dooley's events are taking that to the next level, the way he's doing them now, right? Yeah. We were kind of trying to do them, no muss, no fuss. Dave Knox being part of it. He had people coming into town from different social platforms to talk to him anyway, because he was a P&G. So we had some really great speakers. I remember we had Pandora. So the demand for tickets was always there. But, ultimately, we just wanted to talk about how this applies to businesses in a business environment. And a lot of people were looking around the same time. So it was just right place, right time kind of thing.
Yeah. No, it was good. I remember the Pandora guy, and he actually came. Yeah, so he came in. You guys had a really big venue for that one, I feel like.
I think that was at LPK's community center venue.
Yeah, their little thing, yeah. And he talked about how some guy wrote him, and he was mad that he had Celine Dion like in his mix. And he's like, well, it's an algorithm, And
finally he admitted, I think I'm just mad at, I might like Celine Dion.
Right, exactly.
I respect that. That's I get it.
Music is personal. I totally get that. But then you also have the Bad Pitch blog.
Yes, yeah.
Which
that started earlier.
You can find that still.
It's still out there, yeah. So I haven't been blogging since, I think the last time I posted anything in general was like 2015 or 2016. But if you go all the way back to 2002, that's when I had a mentor that always said, an opinion is worth 80 IQ points, right? And at the time, I saw this article about blogging, and at the people that were doing it that I knew about, they were essentially online angst-ridden teen journal kind of type stuff, right?
Right.
Venting or whatever. And this is the first time I thought about it in a business perspective. Started blogging in 2002, was like one of the first 3 people, I think, in PR to do it that we know of.
Right.
And 2006, that got me into all of these media databases like Cision and Meltwater and Muckrack. And I was getting these ridiculously off-target pitches, for like wooden blinds, like new products that had nothing to do with PR. And I'm like, they're giving my profession a bad name. Hooked up with an author, Richard Larimer, and we decided to do this kind of as a one-off goof. And Gawker eventually picked up a post and boom, and it's more popular than my original blog, which I actually, have probably more liking and fond thoughts about.
Right. Like you
But
put time into it.
Who doesn't want to look at a train wreck though? And that's essentially what the angle was, is showing people what not to do, right? So if people pitched us 2 or 3 times after we asked them to stop, we would out them.
Yeah.
And so everybody was afraid that they were going to get outed on the bad pitch blog. And I told everybody, I'm like, if you're afraid, that's half the battle. I'm like, that pretty much ensures it's not going to happen, So
yeah.
But it was a lot of fun, and I think hopefully it helped a lot of people out. But yeah, it's all still out there.
It was entertaining too, right? It's entertaining. And I also think who hasn't been pitched bad and who hasn't done a bad pitch?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of just the way that it goes. It's just part of your career and just how you grow up through your career. You have to make mistakes. You have to do that.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. But what a great idea. I mean, how did you come up with not only that, but how did you come up with even Cincinnati social media? What's your passion towards connecting people in Cincinnati of the same sort of interest and that collaboration?
Sure. I think, with Bad Pitch, again, it was seeing that my profession was being compared to used car salesmen and ambulance chasers and things like that. And I'm like, there's so much more to this profession than just media relations, let alone bad media relations. Good media relations, the pitch dissolves and becomes a story. You don't know that it was pitched, right? Bad ones become the story like they did in my blog. So that's kind of how that came about. I think with social media, Cincinnati social media, there was already a thing that I was aware of called social media breakfast that was being held in a couple cities. A gentleman came to our city to do it. And I distinctly remember that. And at the end of it, I knew him through blogging. And at the end of it, he said, hey, we're trying to kind of like Johnny Appleseed this thing, plant seeds where we go. Are you up for figuring this out? I said, yeah, for sure. So we started that out. And I've always felt like, with social media, most of the work that we do, first of all, is hands-on at some point. You have to understand that portion of it to even get the strategy right if you don't understand the inner workings. But in the case of social media, it's a circuit that really isn't complete until it turns into this, right? Like person-to-person communication. It's great online, but if it's not somehow working with offline, it just doesn't make any sense, right?
IRL.
Yes.
In real life, yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and I also loved the fact that it would bring people together because as a young person at the time, going to a digital agency, but they were so focused on websites. They didn't really have a focus or even an interest in understanding Twitter or Facebook, right? And so going to those events helped me to connect with other like-minded professionals.
Right.
Because I felt like a loner in the business. I think there's more to this. And it actually helped me. I ended up starting the first Facebook page for Kroger.
Oh, cool.
And then the Gerbs and the Ralphs and the whatever, all the other ones. But it was guys, we can make money off of this.
Right. Yeah.
Right. But people didn't understand that it was something to monetize.
Exactly. Yeah. And maybe part of that was just because it was and still is rented space. Right. I think that really was the first of its kind that it wasn't, paid. It wasn't owned or earned. It was rented. So, and honestly, it was a little bit of all those things too. Right.
Yeah. Right. And still is. Yeah.
So it disrupted a lot of thought processes, which people aren't really into change. So I think it caught a lot of people off guard, and some people hoped it didn't get big, and it obviously crushed. So
it did crush. Yeah. Here we are. So walk me through a little bit of Kevin Dugan history, right? We talked about, a couple of these cool big things. I know, right? Not the painful stuff. I'm not saying that, but you've had a really fun career.
Yeah, I have.
You've had a really fun career. You've done a lot of really cool things. Tell me some of your pride points, maybe. Start there.
I have been lucky in that I've been interested in new technology, and I've been in business to business most of my career until recently. And like I said, with blogging and then social media and then content marketing, those things were new and different. AI is now as well, obviously, but it was something I was always intrigued. And I'm always a firm believer. You can see with any new emerging technology, a couple camps come into play, right? You've got the folks that are, have fire in the eyes coming down off the mountain, and it'll clean your oven. It'll slice and dice and julienne fries. It'll do this and more. It's so amazing. You can't believe it.
You can't not even imagine it.
And you get tired of those people pretty quickly. You're like, yeah, I get it. Right.
Yeah. Right.
And then you have people that hate on it. And that could be for any number of reasons. They don't understand it. They don't want to understand it or what have you. And then you have folks like us in the middle, pragmatic, that are trying to figure it out for what it is, where it fits into everything, and how much attention we need to pay to it. Right. So I'm not a believer in every platform. You have to be on every platform at all.
From a content marketing standpoint, you're saying like you just don't need to be on like Thread.
Typically,
Who cares, right?
what happens, I will say the only reason I'm bummed that I was happy as I was to see Elon Musk burn down Twitter from the inside, because it was waning and just having kind of mixed uses, if any.
It's a dumpster
It
fire.
was, right? It was getting bad anyway. But the fact that Threads came out right around the same time to sort of just have everybody move over there, same stuff, different platform, which is the problem, I think, in trying to be everywhere. A couple things happen. You wind up cutting and pasting your content, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And
you're not being strategic about it. You end up just being like, ugh.
Yeah. Ultimately, your
Rinse
strategy should give you the focus to be able to say, we're not worried about these, or at least prioritize your platforms. I don't care how many resources you have, right? Yeah. And if you do one really well, and that's where most of your customers are, that's all you need.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it. But I've always enjoyed content creation. Even when I was a kid. I remember getting a camera. That was cool. Of course, that kind of, when I got my first iPhone, that was an even bigger deal. But, so photography, writing has always been sort of something I'm into. And between that and the new technology, I lucked into the fact that they sort of like were chocolate and peanut butter, and I made a Reese cup. So
yeah.
I've been very grateful for that. But it's always been interesting. And then as your career evolves, new and different challenges kind of present themselves, and you get to learn new things. And it's funny, the world of work has changed so significantly.
What do you mean by that? The world of work?
So COVID alone, if you just anecdotally look at things like working from home,
yes,
right? Like that is one portion of it. But over time, I've noticed, when I was in school, you were always told, okay, you're going to get one big career at one big place, then you're going to retire with a pension from that place, and that's going to be what you do.
Got it. Right. Huge misconception.
Sure. Yeah. And to the point that things like loyalty, you got a gold watch at 25 years, like loyalty was deemed a good thing. And, especially working with agencies, that's never going to be the case. So I went into the agency world where that couldn't be furthest from the truth, and change started happening more quickly, disruption and things. So I don't think anybody really thinks about that as a reality. I don't know if anybody younger than me really knows that was reality, right?
Well, yeah, I tend to think about even so again, I'm going to age myself at 41, but like staying at one agency for 12 years, I guess I didn't realize how weird that was. That I was kind of the dinosaur at the agency. But seriously, I was kind of the dinosaur at the agency because I had been there. I had grown up at the agency. And when I left and kind of like popped that bubble a little bit and was like, oh, y'all don't stay that long? I didn't. Someone should have told me. Like, I didn't know.
The whole thing's fascinating to me. It's like, when do things like your institutional knowledge go from being an asset to a liability, right? Because if you think about it, as fast as things change anymore, it used to be, well, they have all this institutional knowledge. Yeah. And I've been loyal, so you're paying me a lot more than you used to.
Yeah.
But now it's like, we need to do things differently. There's a beautiful quote from futurist Alvin Toffler. Back in the 70s, he said that, 21st century, the illiterate aren't going to be the people who can't read or write. It's going to be the people that can't learn, unlearn, and relearn, right? Because things are going to be changing so fast.
Yeah.
And, I've really seen that come into play. So at this point, you have all this institutional knowledge, you're being paid a lot of money. They want to do something differently.
Yeah.
And
Go a different direction.
they can pay two people to do what you do for less, that your loyalty suddenly becomes something that they don't need anymore. Right. So a lot of things have changed in that regard that I just think are interesting. I mean, even, something that probably will always be with us in some capacity, ageism at young and old levels, right? So in my last transition, I leaned into it because I'm not going to fool anybody with this hair, right?
Hey, that's coming back though. That's trendy.
Regardless.
The clear glasses and the salt and pepper, that's trendy.
Salt and pepper though, it people assume, right?
Sure.
I leaned into it and would address it right away. And I used to tell people, I'm like, hey, listen, I am Gen X work ethic with Gen Z skill set.
Yeah.
So you get in the best of both worlds.
Right.
And that really helped me start that conversation with people. But in the younger case, even if they're out of school, any of those entry-level job opportunities, those job descriptions all tend to say, experience preferred. How are they going to get it?
3 to 5 years.
How are they going to get it?
Yeah, they're never going to get that experience. And does it count that they had a co-op? I don't know. It's not.
I would say yes.
I would say yes.
Anybody watching this that has a co-op or an internship, if you don't list that as work experience, and you put that under your school, edit your resume immediately.
Yes.
Because it's totally.
It should be considered that. Yeah, I agree.
And I do think that helps. That certainly helps for sure.
And make friends where you're working so that you could use them as references.
Yeah.
For sure. Or have them make introductions for you. Because it really is not like what you know, it's who you know, especially in a city like Cincinnati. And I think especially for any small town city, I think that's kind of the way that it is. It is.
No, it is. And anybody that's tried to look for a job lately, regardless of your age, the online job application process is the most humbling experience.
Really? Yeah.
Ever, because, it's all electronic. You're going through a filter before you even get an automatic ping back to maybe take a personality test. And if you do a certain way on that, you might get to talk to a human, right?
But I'm sure that they put on their values, like we have a great culture. We're really personable.
So the other thing I've noticed about how things have changed, right, is everybody wants to be a family. Like, we're a family here. We're a family. To me, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
I don't want to, I have a family at home. Okay.
Sure.
I want to be on a team.
Sure.
It's something you expect to be on for a limited amount of time. You're going to go to a different team, possibly play against one of your teammates as a competitor or vice versa, right? Like, that.
Yeah.
That's just part of your life. But the more people you know in the industry, again, the better your life becomes. You learn more things, and
you can share more knowledge.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right,
so you don't want to be on a family. You want to be on a team, and I think you begin to look at things a little more accurately. But over time, the whole job search process with all these platforms and everything, they've become so process focused that they haven't been able to, I think, evolve as quickly as the job has, you know? And there's just a lot of things I've just noticed. It's just funny because they're counterintuitive. They want you to be loyal, but
they start you with this shitty online application.
Right.
That's so crazy. I never thought about it that way. Like family versus team. I've never looked at that through those, looking at a work capacity through those lenses. I've never actually thought about it from those two different dichotomies. That's really kind of interesting. Right. Because again, I came from a 12-year family. Sure. Right.
And there's nothing wrong with you having been in an agency for 12 years.
No. I learned a ton.
Per se, right? It's unique for sure, but there's things that you learned that others didn't.
Yeah.
Certainly. Right.
And, right.
And, you were always out there learning new things anyway. So.
Right. But it's still interesting to be out of that bubble and be like, oh my God, everyone's already been out here. Sorry.
But that whole thing. And then the other one I've noticed is continuing education. Bigger companies certainly, I think, have that more on lockdown. They get it. You invest in your employees, but and I've traditionally worked with smaller companies, right, where that stuff's not formalized.
Yep.
I see you just wrap it into your benefits package, and it's just a thing that's done.
Yeah.
Because it's overhead. I get it, but they'll say, oh, no, that's great. That's great. Yeah, we totally support that. And it's expensive to go to conferences where you can find out some of the stuff that'll really change your work and your approach and things. But people will say, well, yeah, but what if I invest in that person and they go work for somebody else? You're not thinking about it the right way. What if you don't invest in them and they stay?
Yeah, right. Then you have a bum employee.
Exactly. And ultimately, you need to start thinking about it in terms of, your competitors and yourself have a talent market that, if you're the only one in your market over time, that's a detriment. You don't want to be the only one in your market. Yeah. You want to have competitors in your market and you share a talent pool.
I was going to ask you about that. Like, how do you feel about having like the competitive market and sharing, not talent necessarily, I mean, you could, I guess, but sharing knowledge across that platform? I mean, like, given the fact that you helped start this inside social media, I feel like you're open to that. And it's, I don't know, I find it very interesting to watch, especially at like the networking events, right? The mixed media event, I saw competitors.
Sure.
I'm just me, so I'm going to obviously be friendly and say hi. And we're all here to learn, right? We're all here to learn. We're all here to network. There's a really large, like, sea of fish out there that we can all go fishing with. I am so pro sharing.
Yeah.
Just share the knowledge.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, I think that you're always going to have somebody that views that as some kind of a weakness probably, but I think long-term, they're the ones that are it's going to be to their detriment to not do that.
Yeah.
Because I've always told people like, with blogs, an article for that blog, let's say I have a series of articles. If I think about it beforehand, it is something that I can kind of reverse engineer. Like, great example, much different than blogs, Star Wars, right? Like George Lucas knew what the first 3 movies were. He had one story. He had to cut it into 3 movies, okay?
Yeah.
And eventually he actually told the front end of it as well. Poorly, but he did.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that if you think about before I lose the thread, keep going. Blogging, right? You're like, okay, I'm going to write about AI. Okay. Well, maybe I'll start out with prompt engineering. Okay. Well, what are like 3 other things I'll probably wind up writing about? Anyway, at the end of it, you could, reverse publish this ebook about AI, but along the way, what you publish, if you've got comments on and people are contributing their thoughts and stuff to it, that end result's going to look different than each individual articles. It benefits from that conversation. Yeah. Everybody, as you noted, is trying to learn about this stuff at the same time. For you to be closed about it. I mean, sure, there's proprietary things that aren't going to benefit you from telling somebody else, but for the most part, everything I'm talking about are just things that if you don't know, you're going to figure them out sooner or later, right?
Well, and it's also, here's my thought process too. I don't disagree with you. I think that that's actually really spot on. I was going to just add to it to say, just because I have this knowledge and I share this knowledge with you doesn't mean you know how to execute that knowledge.
Correct.
So it's also a part of that execution process. Like, it might be something really easy for you to share in a blog post, share at some sort of speaking engagement, a webinar, whatever. But it's up to them to figure out how to implement it in the way that it works for their product, their solution, their client, etc.
Exactly. No, that's a great point. You're absolutely right. For them to just walk with it doesn't mean that they're going to be able to actually use it, put it to good use.
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
Because from a content perspective, that's what we're trying to create here, right? That's why we're doing this podcast. We're not necessarily just a production company. No one gives a shit that we have cameras.
Right.
Like, it's part of it. Like, if you call to say, hey, can you do a video? They're not saying like, by the way, how many cameras are you going to bring? Can you tell me what type they are? Yeah, do you have micro? And if they ask us that, I'm gonna be like, you're not the right client for us.
Yeah.
Because why does it matter, right? But at the same time, we are trying to be a content agency.
Sure.
We are trying to produce a lot of content and show people how you can do a podcast and slice it up into 12 pieces of content. That's the thing. That's the thing that we want to do. But just because we're telling people about it doesn't mean they know how to execute it. This is a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. And content in general is hard. Video,
content's a lot
even
of work.
more so, I would say. And in my experience, I can quickly tell if somebody understands that based on how they engage me for video, right?
Yeah.
First of all, I'm a firm believer that, the story drives the form. There's some things that are going to be better as a infographic. Other things will be better as a video. Yes, video performs better, short video even better. I mean, I get it, but there's other things that aren't going to lend themselves to video.
Yeah, other medias. Yeah.
But they don't think about, what do I want the final version to be? What story do what do I want to say? What's the goal of this piece? They just know, I'm going to be, for like B2B, I'm going to be installing my product at this incredible facility. So I need somebody there to shoot the video, and we'll have a video come out of it. It's like, well, okay, but what do you want to say? What goals do you want to accomplish? Should we storyboard this maybe?
Right. Where is this going to live? Who does this impact? What's your audience? Like, there's so many things.
Exactly. And they just figure if somebody's there to record it, it'll be perfect, but they don't even know what they want yet.
Exactly.
Right? So it's really brutal because everybody is video. I mean, TikTok, right? I mean,
yeah.
I understand it. I get it. But, I mean, I remember at one of Dooley's events, actually, right as I was talking to Brightview, when I saw you about video, the person that said, hey, if you're going to do this, all you need to do is have like 45 days worth of content planned out, and you could post 45 days in a row. You'll get the volume and everything, and then you'll be in the rhythm. And I'm like, okay.
Where's the strategy?
That first of all, right? And more importantly, and let's say you have that strategy and you have a story to tell. Okay, well, I talked about splitting it into 3 parts. In the case of Lucas, you're going to split it into 45 parts. I'm like, so yeah, I mean, I get that that's sort of rules for that platform and that algorithm, the way it works. You need that, right? But I'm not so sure the story I want to tell is going to play to TikTok. So,
Right. And it might not break out into 45 pieces.
Right.
That's a pretty, I don't know.
I mean, I understand.
ADD story.
I understand why the person said that, but it's like, well, I better know the next 60 stories I'm going to tell then.
Yeah.
Before I start this, and I'm like halfway through before I start putting them out there. Otherwise,
right.
You got to be smart about it. But
well, yeah, because there's a quantity over quality business, and then there's a quality over quantity business, and then there's this blend and marriage of it in between, where you make a baby and it's all of the things, right? So
and you can optimize, right?
You can
optimize as you
it.
go.
Yeah. I think
if the baby's ugly, you can make it beautiful.
You can make it prettier. That's right.
We're talking about content. We're talking about content.
Not your actual babies, not your babies. What I was going to say too is, like, from a content perspective, you and I have this awesome background of understanding technology to help drive content. And I think that also creates a huge differentiation between us and others who didn't have that sort of background or that passion. Because when you think about how the technology or how the content's going to be played within technology, it kind of gives you that, I don't know, that advantage. It's almost like a psychology sort of thing that you know about. Like, how are they going to interact with this?
Yes. That gets back to another thing with relevance is, like, I always pride myself on being a player manager. One, because again, I like creating. Okay. That's a passion of mine. But I've always felt that I can understand social media enough to the point that I work it into my strategies as that makes sense, to execute against that strategy. But if I haven't used it or been hands-on with it, I'm not going to understand it enough for that strategy to really be effective. Okay. And again, the way the world works, even though people are expecting you at entry level to be able to code, design, write, do all these different things, it just amazes me that it's set up in a way that, okay, well, the more you're getting paid, the less you're doing things, the more you're managing, you're not doing the work. It's just, I get it, I understand it, but there's always been at a level a fallacy to that where I'm like, okay, but you're not going to be executing. Your product is going to suffer eventually, right? If you're not at least aware of how they're doing it, right? So I find that interesting too with change. If you're not into technology, that becomes an incentive to advance, so you won't have to do that stuff, right?
Right. But, so how, you're in this more healthcare B2C space. How's that transition been from more of the B2B to that sort of B2C healthcare space been?
So Brightview is an outpatient addiction treatment center. We have 100 locations in 8 states, and we're outpatient medication assisted, and are helping people, across the nation. It's a great thing. I have a connection to that, wanting to do that in a couple ways. One, my father eventually died of cirrhosis that he got. He was sober like my whole life, but it eventually kind of caught up with him in the end, right, with his body. And my cousin overdosed. So I had a personal connection to helping people deal with that anyway. And honestly, I'd been getting, everybody wants to know their work has an impact of some kind,
Sure.
and honestly, there was a time when the only way I could really explain to my kids what I did is your father helps people sell things, right?
Right.
Hopefully those
Solutions,
things do good.
Right.
But at my last place of work, it was climate tech. So that was a little bit more obvious, but it was kind of an iceberg. There was still a lot of stuff we had to figure out before we could really make the kind of claims that we were saving the world. And that's not a question to me now. I see the impact that I can have and am having on a day-to-day basis. So, between that and the willingness to learn, unlearn, and relearn, right? It's been a pretty easy shift between the personal connection I have to it and just the desire to try something new.
Brightview does such great work. I was fortunate enough to work on that account when it was been, inception phase. Yeah. And even before Colin was hired on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I was working on the account, and then he got hired on, which was kind of cool. And it is really interesting to me that their mission and how they, they're talking directly to the person who has the addiction. They're not going around them. They're not going to, guardians or things like that. They're talking to them as a person, not as a patient. And it was one of those things where you were like, this is really interesting. And I cannot believe how much it's grown.
It has quite a bit.
Quite quickly.
Unfortunately, due to the need, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's to the point where we'll talk about, to let everybody know we're having an impact. It's like, okay, well, the rate of overdose deaths are slowing. So that's progress, right? We're not done.
Right.
We don't want to have that stat at all.
Right.
But, it's the world we live in. And the other thing I've just become aware of even more so is just the stigma from the self-stigma the patient puts on themselves, but just so many different levels of society, how that kind of kicks in and makes them, less prone to recover. It's tough. So, anything I can do to help deal with that, I learn something new every day talking to patients. It's just amazing.
I'm sure you do. And I'm sure, when you think about like the storytelling piece of it, the content piece of it too, I'm sure you're just like blown away by the amount of information you're getting from them. And one of the other things I thought interesting about Brightview that actually Colin helped me understand was, Jesse, it's not someone who's like on the street. It could be your neighbor. It could be anybody. It could be the person that you work with that you have no idea that they're going through this.
We say that addiction does not discriminate. And honestly, our target audience, is not who you would expect. It's older, and it's people that unfortunately just went to the doctor for pain of some kind at a time when they didn't know any better. They subscribed them opioids. And I want to say there's a stat, I really need to understand the stat better so I could use it more. But I want to say more than half of people addicted to, well over half of the people addicted to opioids, it's because of prescription versus illicit use, right? Like
a surgery or a pain or something.
Yeah. So, and that has nothing to do with the assumption people will say like, well, they don't have willpower or it's their character. It's like, that has nothing to do with it.
No.
It's a disease.
It's a disease.
Addiction is a disease.
Right.
And, we've proven that. And that's the other thing too, is, we're taking an evidence-based approach to it with data and everything. We can tell our patients that, hey, if you stick with this for 30 days, you're 70% more likely to recover.
Right.
You can figure this out.
Right.
You just got to hit this for 30 days. And we're here for you every step of the way. So
in this whole process of being with them every step of the way, talk to us about Brightview Health TV. What are you calling that?
BVTV.
BVTV.
Yeah. So ultimately, the lobby of our centers are interesting places in the sense that if I'm there and I haven't started recovery yet, I'm in withdrawal. Okay. And we have TVs in most, if not all of our lobbies, but they're not always used because if there's something triggering on the TV, that's a tough window, right? If I don't get in and get, medication, and if you're in there by 2, you'll leave with medication. You can, reduce those effects of withdrawal and begin recovery. But if I don't get that, I'm going to go back and start using again, and the odds of me dying, exponentially increase.
Get higher, yeah.
So having something in the lobby that, they can take their attention. We're competing with their phones. So we are streaming content into the lobbies of all of our centers, and have just started doing it this past year, and are now really focused on getting more feedback from patients so that we can put some distraction content on there too, not just because we started out, I told everybody, I said, we are PBS for recovery. We want to be like Discovery Channel for recovery.
Right.
And part of that involves us getting some distraction content that is something they would like, but also it's
healthy. It's not triggering.
Exactly. So, there's companies out there like Patient Point, for example, that do this. Like if you go to any doctor's office, you'll probably see their content, but one, it's pretty costly. And 2, they haven't really gotten into the addiction space yet. So the content wasn't going to be really relevant. So we're trying to fill that need ourselves. So it's been pretty interesting.
It's pretty incredible that you get to that you get to do that. You're like basically producing content. Like, it's not on demand, but it's always going, right? Like always going content for all the centers, all the 100+ centers. Yeah.
Things come up like, okay, well, we want to make sure that we have 8 hours of content so that our front desk staff doesn't hear something twice.
Right.
The infamous, like the trope of you memorize the hotel menu if you leave it on, right? You don't want that to happen. You hear the same
voice because then they're going to not want to be there anymore. They're going to be cranky. It's a whole thing.
Exactly.
There's a lot to consider for the content.
There really is.
It's not just, okay, let's slap up content. You're really being strategic about what kind of content goes on there.
More so as we go, as we learn. But ultimately that's the goal. But we did kind of have to do proof of concept and just get it started.
Yeah.
So it's a lot less PBS than it used to be, but it was very PBS. Not that PBS isn't a wonderful thing.
It's a wonderful thing.
But if everybody's showing up looking for MTV and PBS is on,
that's a problem.
I'm trying to get in the middle.
That's a problem.
So
yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Like I said, I've been wanting to get you on this podcast. You have been a plethora of knowledge, and I'm so excited that you were here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. If you would like to rediscover your own story, please connect with us at any of the links below. My name is Jessie Heron. Thanks for taking a break with me.